Hi, hi, hi. Hello, everyone. The international break is over, and so it's the perfect time to go over what happened, right? Namely, the U.S. men's national team. Welcome to another World Football stream here with Bleacher Report, whether you're watching from the app or YouTube. Some of the qualifiers were crazy, weren't they? I know we're talking U.S. men's national team, but Scotland, Denmark was wild. Ireland was wild. Haiti qualifying, Curacao qualifying. But like I said, we're talking U.S. men's national team. I don't want to go off on a tangent. There's so much I could speak about. And there's a lot to get through in this one. And as usual, I have a favor to ask. I mentioned the app, I mentioned watching from YouTube. Wherever you are, get those comments in. Let me know what you think about the things I'm saying and just in general about the people we'll be speaking about during this show. Okay? In fact, let me know your thoughts on Pochettino. And speaking of which, let's talk about Pochettino right now. Let's get right into it. Waste no more time. I think Personally, I think that a lot of people have come around to Mauricio Pochettino these days, and it seems like they fully trust him now because for a bit, there were thoughts or accusations that he wasn't taking his job seriously enough and didn't understand sort of the US fan culture, the US soccer fan culture, because of the team selections he was making and the constant tests, the lack of communication with players, saying they needed more from the fans, those kinds of things. But ever since that win over Japan, people are really, well, A, starting to see the vision that he had all along and how he was testing these players and rebuilding the culture, and B, really starting to see how valuable having a good coach is, right? Like, this is about the same group of players, minus those introduced by Poch that Berhalter had. And look at how much better the USA looks. Just look at this in general, unbeaten in their last 5 matches against top 40 ranked FIFA opponents, all who are qualified for the 2026 World Cup. What year is it? I have no idea. But prior to that, even within Poch's tenure, he was having difficulty winless or having just like one win from 7 or 8 against top 30 opposition. And he's turned it around so much since Japan. And one of the things that he's done really well is that the USA isn't so one dimensional anymore. The 3-4-3 or 3-4-2-1, whatever you want to call it, it's absolutely bearing fruit in how they play. They aren't just a threat on the counter anymore. They can play in possession. They understand his concepts to a point where they can break down defenses that sit deep as well. And it took time, right? It took time just as it did at his club level teams. At Chelsea, it wasn't a stupendous season overall. It was pretty good. It was moving in the right direction, but it was certainly improving as time went on, where at the end of the season, Chelsea were looking much better. At Tottenham, it wasn't an instant success. It took time. At Southampton, PSG maybe less so. But this is what he does, right? He has an intricate way of playing, and it takes time for all the principles to sort of soak in for the players. But like anything, it's worth waiting. And in the end, Poch is at his best, I think personally, when he has young, hungry players to work with. In fact, that's probably why he didn't work out at PSG when now that you mention it. But, he's dealing with Messi, Neymar, all these kinds of guys. It just didn't work out. But with the U.S. men's national team, he has these young guys that are eager to buy into everything. And he's turned the tide, eager to put on a show for the USA. And so he's basically turned, doubters into believers. I hate to use these sort of Jurgen Klopp isms, but he did really well to do so. Look at all these young guys that he's brought through, like this past window since that Japan match, but this window against a very strong team in Paraguay, a team that's very much in form. He started a few guys who people thought were on the outs already, such as a Gio Reyna, and he got a tune out of them, winning 2-1 in a great performance. Reyna, who we'll talk more about later, is a player that everyone can see his talent, right? That has never been a question because when he's on form, he is a top player within this team, a guy that can turn matches on their head on his own. For him to be given a chance by Poch, his first matches with the States since I believe the Copa America under Berhalter, and for him to play this well, when he's not even playing that often with his club team at the moment, it speaks to great man management from Mauricio Pochettino, and it speaks to putting players in positions where they can thrive. Going on to the next match, they win 5-1 against Uruguay. Okay, there's a lot of talk from people saying that Uruguay is trying to get Bielsa sacked. That all the players don't believe in him anymore. They've started to go downhill since about Copa America. They did qualify. They did qualify for the World Cup, but they've just been looking poor, poor, poor. And the USA beat them 5-1. It's a team that is filled with talented players on Uruguay. And they beat them handily, especially when you consider all of the injuries that the USA had and all of the players that they sort of were rotating in. This wasn't the USA A team at all. And that speaks to the system. It sort of encapsulates everything that we've talked about so far, saying that it was good that they had the rough times to sort of see the reality. It was good that he cut out sort of the complacency from the regulars that were in the U.S. men's national team, calling on the fringe players. You know, he has everyone performing well now because he's shown that, yes, he believes in everyone, but no, your place isn't assured. And I don't care about your name. Your name won't do anything for you. It won't do you any favors. Your form, your ability, your commitment to the culture of this team and their vision will. That's what he had against Uruguay, no matter who the players were on the pitch. And that's why they looked so successful. They look like a single machine now. He broke that team down, the U.S. men's national team, also Uruguay, but he broke down the U.S. men's national team, and he has absolutely built them back up much, much stronger since then. And speaking of which, let's move on to some of those players. Some of the guys who have sort of seen their stocks rise, you know, building back stronger themselves. Let's talk about whose stocks have risen over this past international window. And I think the first and biggest one that I want to speak about is Giovanni Reyna. And as we touched upon earlier, because there was one time where, you know, behind Christian Pulisic, he was the most exciting prospect that the USA had. There were even some who maybe got ahead of themselves and believed that he would achieve more than Pulisic. I get it, because when it comes to pure technique and the form that he was in, you know, playing in the Bundesliga, he was collecting believers, right? He was really collecting believers. But injuries have absolutely rocked Gio Reyna. There have also been some off-field distractions that have happened that we won't really get into. A failed loan that he went on that didn't really help his reputation too much. And so belief in him, especially with the U.S. men's national team, did wane a bit. And even looking at this, 33 appearances, 9 goals, 5 assists. That's pretty decent. I mean, it's not, you know, premium, but it's pretty decent for the position that he plays in, right? Sort of a creative attacking midfielder. So coming back to the team and not just scoring, which was his first goal since March of 2024, over about a year and a half ago now, but also playing well. It saw a surge in his stocks, because remember, it wasn't just the goal against Paraguay, but he got that assist against Uruguay as well, looked up, saw where Tessman was making the run, and put it in such an awkward place for the keeper, in no man's land for him, that he had no chance at it. And this is what Poch highlighted after the match, you know, making people think that he could make the team, you know, against Paraguay, that is, not after Uruguay. But he said his capacity to read the game and find free space was a nightmare for Paraguay. Now, Gio Reyna's club situation isn't perfect yet, because he is dealing with injuries yet again. That's the big thing that constantly hampers him, which is so unfortunate with Gio Reyna. However, another showing like this one in the next camp, and I think you can bet that Gio Reyna will secure his place, which is not what you could have said a few months ago, right? Now, let's move on to our next guy. So Gio Reyna, he's definitely someone who's had his stock rise. But our next guy, Max Arfsten, he had a stock increase. And I say this knowing that this wasn't the first time he's had a stock increase over the last few months. The reason why I have him here now, however, is that time and time again, each time he's called upon, he tends to deliver in that sort of left back, left wing back position. Now, with Jedi Robinson out, poor Anthony and his injury nightmare that he's going through, but Arfsten has shown that he is very, very capable as a replacement. Does he add everything that Anthony Robinson does on the defensive end? No, though he has improved there a little bit. He is naturally an attacker. After all, you know, mainly playing on the left wing for Columbus, as this says here, 24-year-old Columbus Crew wingback Max Arfsten beating the defender 1v1 and playing a picture-perfect ball on a platter for Gio Reyna, the last guy we talked about. He has 1 goal and 5 assists in 15 matches for the U.S. men's national team. So that just does illustrate how good of an attacking threat he is down that left side. He does leave some to be desired defensively, but now that they've switched, you know, that's the brilliant thing about this switch to the 3-4-3 under Pochettino. There was justified concern about him playing in a back four, playing as a strict left back in a back four absolutely justified to be a little bit worried, even though he got a goal and an assist in one of those matches. So with a not so great performance defensively, but still providing going forward. But put him in a left wing back position, and you get the best out of what he has to offer going forward, while simultaneously relieving some of the defensive burden. We saw him assist the previous guy, Reyna, like I just said. His deliveries are constantly great, and I think Poch will be looking at him as one of the people who made sort of the best claim to Anthony Robinson's throne, so to speak. He's been consistently called up, consistently given opportunities, and has consistently improved and taken those opportunities well. So his stock is consistently rising, and I think he's going to absolutely be a shoe-in for this men's national team squad for the World Cup. Now, our final guy who is on the rise, another guy in MLS. He had a major jump this past window, and that is Alex Freeman. Young guy, 21 years old, has been getting pretty regular call-ups from Poch due to his great performances for Orlando over the past season or two. Now, he was more of a winger in his youth, but he was converted to be a fullback as time went on, and that shows in his play when you're watching him. You can see it. That shows in his numbers for Orlando, right? That shows in the goal he scored against Uruguay. I mean, his second goal, where he just stepped around Ronald Araujo like he wasn't even there. This is a Barcelona center back. Comfortable with the ball at his feet. Man of the match, like this tweet says. 82% passing accuracy, 4 touches in the opposition box, playing as a right center back, by the way. 6 passes into the final third, 4 ball recoveries, 3 out of 5 ground duels, 2 out of 3 aerial duels. I mean, he was doing it all. He was all over the place. He was an absolute monster. Now, the thing that is so unbelievable about his performance there was, I think the right center back position isn't fully decided in Pochettino's mind just yet. I think it's kind of for grabs at the moment due to other guys who we'll maybe get to later not impressing too much, right? Freeman absolutely impressed when he started in the right center back position against Uruguay. 2 goals from that position. And I know I just praised the second goal, but the first one showed his aerial prowess as well with that driven header at the back post. So he's big, he's tall, he is fantastic with the ball at his feet. He's improved a lot defensively. He reads the game well. He's fast, which is important for those right and left center backs in a back three. He's a player that can do it in both directions on the pitch, and I think that sort of cemented himself as being invaluable to Pochettino in this window. Now, Sports Watcher says, do you think the U.S. has a chance in the World Cup? If we're talking about winning the thing, I don't think so. But I don't think that a round of 16 or quarterfinals run is sort of out of the question. But who knows? These things can always surprise you. Like, let's look at Morocco and what they did in the previous World Cup, making it all the way to the semifinals, all the way there, and surprising everybody, taking out big teams like Portugal, Spain along the way. So these things can happen. And what I like about the U.S. men's national team at the moment is how Mauricio Pochettino has them playing as a team. That's not something that you always see in international football. It just looks like, a collective of players who are really good, and whoever's players make the least amount of mistakes, or whoever's big guy can step up the most ends up winning, that kind of thing. But the tactics, the belief, the vision that Pochettino has with this U.S. men's national team, how he has them playing and all pulling in the right direction and sort of changing this belief behind them. Like, all the fans are behind the team now again. Who knows? Playing on home soil, who knows how far they can go. But my realistic prediction would be a quarterfinals run. Thank you for that, Sports Watcher. Now, we've talked about all the ups. Let's talk about the downs, the guys whose stocks may have dropped. And they're directly related to the performances of some of the other guys, at least the first two. Now, the first of which being Joe Scally. He wasn't necessarily bad in his game from this window. Yes, he got torched by Miguel Almiron for Paraguay's goal, which isn't great. It wasn't entirely his fault, but he got absolutely torched, burned for pace. But Scally is caught in a weird position now where he has someone like Freeman, who we just spoke about, who has been impressing over and over, and impressing in both the wing back and center back position now, which is no good for Scally, right? And the thing is, Scally is someone who a lot of people were perplexed as to why he wasn't getting a call up to the national team under Pochettino for so long. Over and over, he wasn't making the squads. And so this window was very important for him. And you have to wonder, did he do enough to cement his place, to impress Mauricio Pochettino? That's why I say it feels like his stocks went down a little bit, because prior it was like, oh, his stocks are high. He's a great player that hasn't been asked to play yet. Then he was asked to play, and it's like, well, is he any better than the other guys that were playing in those positions before him? Because Scally, for me, is best suited to a back four, playing as a true right back in a back four. But since the move to the back three, there are just other players that are excelling more than him in the right center back and in the wing back. You know, you have Dest, who you probably won't get ahead of for the wing back position. You have Freeman, who we just spoke about, who can play wing back or right center back. Then you also have, Freeman, who I just spoke about. You also have another guy we're going to speak about in a moment. But there was a lot of expectation around Joe Scally, and I don't know that he blew everyone away enough. I think at most people may be curious to see if he can play in that right center back position more effectively in another window. But I don't think he came anywhere close to proving that he is above the other options that Mauricio Pochettino has. Now, the next guy that we're going to speak about is in a similar boat, in my opinion, in my position, not my position, Miles Robinson. And I do think that this is to a lesser degree than Joe Scally, as I think he is nailed on for the final squad. He will make it, but I don't think his place in the starting 11 is nailed on just yet. And while he looked decent in this window, he also played a role in that goal that Paraguay scored. You know, he didn't step up at the right time for the offside trap. He was on cruise control, absent-minded, but he has at times been on the cusp of being like a nailed-on starter for the USMNT national team, someone that you know is always going to be in that back line. At least what I mean is, when people are looking ahead to the World Cup, right? He's one of the more debated center backs in this moment, though. There are people who think he's a shoo-in and others who see him as sort of the weak point of that back three. Reason being is they identify that he makes mistakes for all of the good he does defending, as well as how he isn't really comfortable with the ball at his feet. As, you know, other options, there are a lot of people who would want to see McKenzie played in there. And now with the rise of Freeman and how well he handled playing in that spot, now you'll have people wanting to see him in that position much more. So basically, Miles Robinson went from someone who I think was sort of floating around the team, always kind of there, sometimes a starter, more often a starter, sometimes a substitute, to perhaps pushing to start at the World Cup, to now being questioned again because he doesn't have the full trust of everyone. And the mistake against Paraguay didn't help him there. You know, he kept Almiron on side for one, and then he completely lost track of Arce. So not a good look for Mr. Miles Robinson there. And finally, let's get to our last guy with the downward arrows, which you hate to see, right? With every passing window, it feels like Matt Turner's stocks drop further and further. Like he is getting further and further away from a starting position with the U.S. men's national team. He didn't get a call up this time. He's back in England training with Crystal Palace at the moment. And even for all of these friendlies, he cannot get a game under Mauricio Pochettino. The goalkeeper position has been an absolute lock for Matt Fries. He's Pochettino's guy. That's been established at this point. That is the one position, I'd say, well, one of maybe a few others, that has been absolutely locked in. You know that Matt Fries is going to be the starter for Mauricio Pochettino at the World Cup. If he wasn't, that would be very weird for him to play him so often, not give anyone else a sniff, and then start someone else at the World Cup. It just doesn't seem any like it's a possibility, because we have no idea where guys like Matt Turner or all these other guys, Zach Steffen, etc., where they kind of rank amongst the other choices, because they don't play at all, right? There hasn't been anyone else getting opportunities. So Turner's stock in relation to Fries, he's been on a downward trajectory. That loan to Crystal Palace, where he played just 4 times, really hurt him in the eyes of Pochettino. He wants his players playing football, which is totally understandable as a coach, right? So it's no wonder he sought that move to New England, where he played every league match since joining them in August. But he came into a side that was struggling in 11th, not having a good season. He is playing, but it can be difficult to shine in those kinds of situations. So I feel for a guy, you know, it shows the importance of choosing your next career move wisely. Maybe some bad luck along the way, right? And I don't fault him for wanting to take these ambitious steps, but Getting that move to Arsenal, for example, things could have gone very differently for him. He went to Arsenal at a time where they didn't have a guarantee in goal. There was a possibility that he could have had more playing time with them, but then David Raya arrives. Clearly Mikel Arteta saw something in Turner that wasn't convincing him enough. And they wanted someone who was more of a guaranteed performer in the Premier League, with Premier League experience, with potential to become the number one for Spain eventually. That's how good David Raya is. And so with Raya arriving, Turner moves on. And since then, his career has sort of been stop-start. He got quite a few opportunities with Nottingham Forest, playing in the Premier League. That's great. Palace, as mentioned, not really, mostly, and in fact, only in cup matches. Then he moves to Lyon, only to go on loan to a New England side right away, right? So these ambitious moves have sort of come back to bite him in a sense, which is unfortunate because you'd never want someone to sort of lack ambition or say no to a move like that when they come along. Who knows when they'll come along again? But unfortunately for him, he's now lost his starting place as the U.S. men's national team number one because of it. And funnily enough, he may need another loan to play some football now and the start of the MLS season. He might need another move that takes him to June or whatever. So we'll see. Okay, speaking of that, why don't we move on to guys who actually need a move themselves in order to get into the U.S. men's national team roster for the 2026 World Cup? And first up, we have Yunus Musa, who for a while looked like he was really on a trajectory to compete with the likes of, Adams, McKennie or Cardoso or whomever you want in the central midfield position. And that is a pretty hotly contested area of the pitch for the USA. So he did get a move from Valencia to AC Milan, was looking great for a while, but began fizzling out. Then he moved on loan to Atalanta this past summer. The man has barely played. Now they just switched coaches once again. And so maybe Raffaele Palladino will play him a little bit more than he has been already. But after starting a match, he was relegated to a bench role this season. He's played just 145 Serie A minutes across 6 appearances out of a possible 11 appearances in Serie A. So he's spending a lot of matches just sitting on the bench for the whole 90 minutes. Not great. Not great for someone who has ambitions to play at a World Cup, right? Even against Bari in the Coppa Italia, not even a Serie A side, he was a substitute. Against Slavia Praha, one of the bottom half weaker teams in the Champions League, no minutes. It's a puzzling situation for Yunus Musa, who for so long, really looked like he was going to be the future of that midfield. Like, oh, here we go. The US just signed another great dual nat, right? And now he just seems so far from getting a call up to the US men's national team. And like I said, there's a lot of competition in that area of the pitch, even from the next guy that we need to speak about. So Yunus Musa has to do something. He needs to find another club in Europe to go and play where he's sort of guaranteed minutes to get back to that kind of form where he can really make a push, because right now he is not pushing at all to get into that US men's national team. Now, the next guy, as I mentioned, is Diego Luna. And Diego Luna is looking like he really could make it into this US men's national team roster for the World Cup. Now, he plays a different kind of midfield role, more attacking, though he also plays on the wing, and he even scored in this past window. He looked very good. He's someone who has really endeared himself to a lot of US men's national team fans. I mean, they love the Moon Man, right? But look at who he's fighting against for a spot in this team. Guys who operate in similar areas to him, either like winger or central attackers. There's so many of those in modern football now. You have Pulisic, you have Reyna, you have McKennie, Aronson. I mean, he's probably ahead of Aronson by my money. You have Tillman as well. All of these guys that are fantastic players. And this is where it gets tricky for him. The fact that all of these guys are playing in Europe, Pochettino will have time to watch them from now until the next camp. Diego Luna, I think he should absolutely consider or prioritize even getting a loan to Europe. I don't care where he goes. Last summer he was linked with Celta Vigo a lot. A move like that could probably be great for him. But I mean, how realistic is it that a club in Europe would want to take on a player of his relative stature for a few months, sort of as a favor to him, unless he works out something that, to go until the end of the season, then return to Salt Lake after the World Cup, something like that. Or maybe this would be the time that he makes that permanent move from January onward. Who knows? But I think that he needs to prioritize it. Otherwise, he's just sort of threatened by the guys who are all playing in Europe. And finally, but first, Be Right says predictions for the final World Cup roster. I can get into that in just a moment. I mean, I think I don't have all the names ahead of me, but I think that of the people I've talked about, I'll give you this. How about I give you this? Be Right. Of the people I talked about, I do think that Musa is not getting in. I think that Luna is getting in. Turner, I think he's getting in, but he's never starting a game. I think that Robinson does get in, of course. Scally, he could be the one that is sort of the big surprise that doesn't make it. I think that he's one that could potentially not make it. And then the guys who I said had their stock rise, Freeman, Arfston, and Reyna, I think that they all make it in. Unless Reyna, I mean, the thing with Reyna is he going to pick up an injury, right? So that's the only thing that could potentially hold him back. But I think that he'll make it as long as he stays healthy. Now, let's get to our final guy who could use a move. Another MLS player whose stocks have also been rising, especially after that match against Uruguay, Sebastian Berhalter. Now, he would be fighting for a central midfield position. And as I was saying, it's very hotly contested. I think he's on the cusp. I think if we're making the U.S. men's national team roster right now for the World Cup, he's there, in my opinion. But similarly to Luna, there will be a few months here of no football for him where the Europe-based guys will be playing regularly, in theory at least, right? Now, Berhalter has impressed with how aggressive he is, how willing to work he is. He brings great intensity to the midfield that Pochettino will love, but he's not just that, as his deliveries into the box when he has room to work, or as well as from set pieces especially, pretty invaluable, right? I mean, he's fantastic in those areas. And the goal he scored, disgusting goal that he scored. He's a massive threat from dead ball situations. He strikes the ball purely, good vision, etc. So he needs to be playing. Because what if someone like Johnny Cardozo, who's been injured for a while, returns from injury and starts balling out at Atletico Madrid? Meanwhile, Berhalter isn't playing at all because it's MLS offseason. He's someone you'd want in the fold given all of the upside he brings, but it's such a competitive part of the pitch. Let's say Musa and Cardozo start playing well in Europe. Musa, he needs like a bit of a miracle to get going again in the winter. But let's say those two start playing really well. You might start to fear for Sebastian Berhalter's place in this U.S. men's national team side. But that is just my opinion. That is just my opinion on it. So Yunus Musa, Diego Luna, and Sebastian Berhalter all need moves. And guys, that's my take on everything U.S. men's national team right now. That's everything. Be Right. Thank you, actually. Thank you for joining and for chatting, and anyone else who dropped questions or comments in the chat. I very much appreciate it. And yes, that set piece was so disgusting. The way they played that. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. The whip he got on that ball. Unreal. So, stocks up, stocks down, thoughts on Mauricio Pochettino, all of it covered in this show. I thank you guys again, Be Right, and everyone, Sports Watcher. Thank you. We'll have another show for you guys next week, although a note here, I do believe that it will be on Wednesday rather than Thursday, because it is, of course, Thanksgiving in the USA. So, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.